Scene one, Apple, take one.
Shooting today in the Monster Sound and Picture Studio, who I am partnering with this season to have a professional recording space. And I just wanted to show you a little behind the scenes before we get to our interview today. Now, they will have a multi-cam, multi-mic setup, which we do not have built out yet, but I'm all set for the interview. Got my little portable setup here, and in a moment we are going to get to it. But I just wanted to thank Monster for providing this space, which will be open to anyone to come in the Las Vegas area. So if you want a professional studio space for voiceover, podcasts, putting together a reel, or any other purpose, come on down. Hi, everyone. This is Shane Borza. I'm the host of Film Notes. We're here with another episode. Today's guest is Sammy Sarzoza, who's a photographer and creation consultant. He specializes in helping people make YouTube content, but he's also done a lot of other things in the industry. So we're going to talk with him a little bit about where he's been and where he's going. So Sammy, welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you, Shane. Where I'm going, I don't know. Maybe you could tell me. Maybe you can do the whole episode and then you'd be like, Sammy, this is where you should go, because sometimes I don't know.
Well, we were talking a little bit before we started rolling about just that very thing, where a lot of us start in one place and end up in a different place. And sometimes it's unexpected. But, you know, we had worked together in like post-production at Deluxe for a while, and then we haven't seen each other in a couple of years. So talk to me a little bit about how you got started in the industry. Is this a lifelong interest? Like when you were a kid, did you want to make movies? Or is it something that you discovered in school? How did you get started and where did that happen?
Yeah, I guess there's like a lot of prologue. I mean, I was always interested in movies and stories and storytelling. A lot of my childhood was like, it was a bit chaotic in my household, my family, a large, ethnic family. So like a lot of very loud, and I was kind of an introspective kid, so I would just play with my action figures all the time, and just to get away from like a lot of the chaos going on around me. I think that's probably where I fell in love with storytelling, because I would just sit with my action figures for like hours and hours and hours. Like everybody knew, just like give Sammy some action figures and you could just leave him alone, because he could just make up these big elaborate stories in his head. It didn't really do much with it though. Like my love for storytelling, I wasn't one of the kids that like, I'm making short films or with video cameras and writing stories all the time. Um, it wasn't until like I was in my 20s and I was working as a liquor delivery. Oh, sorry. I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota. I usually start out from St. Paul, Minnesota, born and raised. We say St. Paul. I say St. Paul. It's the people call it Twin Cities, but we're specific. I'm specific about St. Paul because they say the Bible mentions St. Paul, but doesn't say anything about Minneapolis. So it's our joke there. So, yeah, St. Paul, Minnesota, born and raised, now live in Los Angeles, but catching you up a little bit. But I was working for a liquor delivery company in our liquor company in St. Paul, the biggest one in the state. And I was doing delivery. I was a Teamster. So like I'm kind of like a tough guy, I guess. And we went on strike. I'd been on the job for about a year or so, like delivering liquor all around town to bars and restaurants and stuff. Physical job, tiring job, like 14-hour days in the snow. Like sometimes in Minnesota, the summers, it could be like, 102 degrees and humid, or, 30 below in the winter. So I was working in all those conditions, and we went on strike, and the union leader was just like, all right, guys, we got him. It was 2008, 2007. And he was like, we got him. We're just gonna go on strike, and they're going to fall on their knees and beg us to come back after a week. Like 4 weeks later, we were still on strike. And like, I was like pretty bored on the strike line. And prior to the strike, I'd bought a video camera, and I was just bored. And I started just kind of making videos. I worked because to do that job, like there was just like a lot of characters Like, you know, I was surrounded by characters that worked in the warehouse and also did delivery driving. And I took the video camera and I started making little videos and coming home and editing them just because I had the time to, and learning about like kind of video editing. And there was this newish website called YouTube, and I figured out how to like export them and make the files to upload them to YouTube. And because there really wasn't a lot on YouTube, like some of the videos kind of went like viral, I guess. Like I remember waking up one morning and seeing one of the videos had like 30,000 views or something. And I was like, what just happened? Like, what is this new website? And like, why are people interested in this? And I kept making new videos just because it was fun and everybody kind of got into it. It was easy to share them on YouTube. So like they could share them to their friends and family, and people kind of hammed it up. And we started telling our story. The union leader came to me and he was like, what else can you do with this? Can you tell it? Can we get out a message? And I was like, well, yeah, like we can make videos about like why we're on strike and like what we're doing. And I started making those kind of videos, and the union started to pass them around to the company's clients, like the bars and the restaurants, and to the community, saying like why we're on strike, what we're doing. And it was like this new way of telling stories, a new platform. And the company, which is like a big dinosaur, like they didn't have any response. They were completely embarrassed. There was nothing they could do, nothing they could say to like to get out of to challenge a message that was available 24/7, you know. And they were completely embarrassed. And one of the guys was dating, one of my union brothers was dating a woman in the office, and she came out one time from work she stopped at the strike line, and she gave him a piece of paper to give to me, and it was a memo, like a little memo from the company saying if anybody is caught watching these videos, like like in the office or whatever, like they will be disciplined severely. I wish I would have kept that piece. He gave it to me, and I was like, I wish I would have kept that because it's pretty funny. Like, like you're not allowed to watch these videos, everybody. But the company was completely embarrassed. They came back to the table and they settled the strike, right? And it was the first time that I had ever seen firsthand like the power of story. Like, wow, I changed something here. Like just me. I mean, everybody else, but come on, pat myself on the back. Like, like there's a power in storytelling. Like, wow, like you hear it, but like to actually do it and to see it change something was really powerful to me. And as they were wrapping up the strike and waiting to sign the paperwork to go back in, one of my union brothers pulled me aside, and he he said to me like Sammy, I talked to the other guys, and like whatever this is, like you're good at it. Like we don't want to see you go back in. Right. And I call it my Goodwill Hunting moment. If you've ever seen the movie Goodwill Hunting, where Ben Affleck tells Matt Damon, like, you're like, get out of here. Like, I want to wake up one morning and you're not here. And it was true, and it was authentic. And I always think about that moment because like he didn't have to tell me that. And like they didn't have to, like the fact that they all said, like, you're not allowed to go back in. You got to go do whatever this is because like you're good at it. I knew it, but like to have somebody else tell me that is not invested in my life or anything was really powerful. And so I did. Like I never went back in. I I I found Minneapolis Community Technical College had just revamped their program to kind of mirror um, the USC program, and this was the first year that they were going to do it. So I applied to the program, and I got in, and I went to film school. It was a fully functioning film program that taught it from the perspective of like a trade. Like this is going to be your job. So we weren't really trained as artists. We were trained as tradespeople because it was a community and trade school, maybe similar to probably like LACC would be here. Like we're going to teach you how to do this as a job. Um, and I really enjoyed it. Like I really found something there. Um, Maybe it was just like the diversity of the student body and just the professors and like the ability to just kind of create what you wanted to. Like the state had put in a bunch of money in the equipment and the facilities um, by way of the college, but like it was just it was so unique. And the fact that they were just able to support us in creating whatever we wanted to create. And I just took the opportunity and ran with it. Like any little, I'm probably not supposed to say it, but oh, whatever, I'm graduated. Like, you take the equipment out on the weekend and like go do a gig and make some money, like, right. Like, um or just like, you weren't really, you were going to do a class project, but you're also going to do like your own little project with the equipment, right? And then I found a way to work at the equipment room that we had as a work study, and learn like so much more about like equipment and preparation of equipment and checking your equipment and troubleshooting equipment. And then my first year, I there was during my first year, in like the first probably semester, there was an email that came in to all the students because one of the professors had dated a roller derby girl like a long time ago. Well, he dated her, but then she became a roller derby girl, and so she sent an email through him, like, to all the students saying like, hey, we're the North Star Roller Girls. We're looking for someone to come record our bouts. Um, it said it said a lot of other information what they were looking for, but I'll never forget the last line was like, so if you like women in short skirts beating the crap out of each other, email us back. And I was like, well, I like that. Yeah, like, and apparently I was the only one that emailed back, so I got the job. So it teaches you film note. Sometimes all you got to do is reply to an email to get a job, because you never know. Maybe nobody else applied to the job. As I was going through school, it was kind of a thing that helped support me in building like film job experience or like video job experience. Um, but also like just like being exposed to this weird world of roller derby. So my trajectory was like going to school, but also becoming like the world's premier videographer of women's roller derby, which was like a strange experience. Because like, again, like I was just posting things on YouTube and going viral again. I wish I would have stayed on YouTube and like been an early adopter at this point, looking back, because I had a lot of early success on YouTube, but I kept putting it down. But yeah, roller derby like taught me a lot. Like, it's fast and it's furious and it's DIY and it's dangerous. I've gotten run into by a lot of roller derby girls, 200-pound women crashing into me at, you know, damn near 40 miles an hour on roller skates. Like, it's like a dangerous thing, but it taught me like situational awareness, like always be like looking around, knowing where you are, knowing your footing, knowing what's in your peripheral, which would help me in a lot of things, as I'm sure we'll talk about later. But it was a really fun experience of just being in that world and being around these like really, people talk about like strong women and power. It's a buzzword in Hollywood and stuff these days. And like, but they don't really know what it means, or it doesn't seem like we just see a movie where like a powerful woman is just like punching a guy or something. I don't know, like punching a bad guy. It's like, it's so much more. And I guess I'm really grateful that experience of just seeing like women that were doing this dangerous thing for no glory, for no money. They had to pay to play. That were also mothers, that were also lawyers, that were also, on these committees to make sure that their bouts would happen on time and under budget. Like, it was my first time seeing women like that. And I put a lot of that into my work. That's always going to be like infused in the DNA of my work, is like that, from that perspective of like this is what a strong woman is. And I spent 3 years like in the trenches with them. And yeah, forever it'll be in anything I do, like an element of that will always be in my work. So I'm grateful for that experience. It wasn't always easy, didn't pay a lot. But some of the friendships I made there are still to this day, more than a decade later. Um, um, but in school, like I also made like a lot of other content as well. Like I was just constantly, me and my peers and my fellow classmates were just, to have that environment. I don't know if that exists anywhere else, where you're just, I think they've tightened the belt a little bit now since like our class, because our class is like the first class. But just that opportunity to create anything that we wanted to with the equipment and the space and the facility was I made a lot of crap and started to build like some of my video business as well eventually that I would make go full time into after school. But I got my degrees and they had like a cinema production. You got like a certificate in cinema production the first year. It was a 2-year program technically, and then the second year you pick your discipline. And at the time they had a directing, producing was 1 degree, screenwriting, editing, and cinematography. And while like I loved camera, like I loved shooting at the time, like obviously because I was shooting roller derby girls, like the physical toll on the body was that I saw. It was just like a physical job in its physical department. And my dad has been a pipe fitter my entire life, a tradesman, working construction. And I worked a physical job too, like doing delivery. And I couldn't, as much as I loved camera, I knew that I just couldn't. It would be like it felt like a sin to be like to work with my body that much, uh, and to see like my dad like work with his body his whole life. So I picked directing and producing that first go round and got my degrees in producing and directing. It was a combined degree, and we made our short films, our capstones. We had to produce and direct them, which was challenging at the time, but it paid off later because more and more people have to do that these days than ever before. And I feel like I was ahead of the curve. And then I was like, well, I mean, I really like writing. So what if I go back for another year and they allowed you to do that, like go back for a third year and get like the other discipline. And I did that. So I went back and I got the screenwriting degree as well. And that is when that third year and going through the program of the screenwriting with my professor Hafed, who's we call him the Hoff, really experienced, just really knowledgeable, really thoughtful professor. I mean, we had like all of our professors were really, really great. My other professor too, named Vic Scahill, worked out in Hollywood here in the late 90s, early 2000s. Worked on some really big things. All of his friends are famous. That's what he always says, because they are. Like 2 of his friends wrote the Marvel, like, all the Marvel movies, Captain America and Endgame, Marcus and McFeely. But just to have that kind of knowledge base for us. But between him and Hafed, like just really lit the spark in me to really pursue writing. And when I was going through that third year of like screenwriting, I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I really, really, really love. I really love writing. It feels like the most natural way for me to get out my voice, get out my anxieties, my fears in a really natural way. More than directing, more than anything else that I was doing creatively. And that was it. Like, I was like, I found my thing, was writing. And pretty much ever since then, I've been really focusing heavy on writing. So I feel like I'm talking a lot. Do you want any questions at this point?
Well, yeah, let me jump in. But you're
intuitive on a listener, Shane.
You were on a great roll, and also it just flowed so well from like one level and experience to the next. So I felt like jumping in, and I could have a couple times because we have some good parallels actually. So, well, first, like you mentioned, it is, I think, important for each of us in our own way to really embody that sense of like, oh, story is important because I can see, this story affected me or my story affected someone else. And I'm glad that happened, both through the union, but also, like you said, like the Derby girls. And couple things that you mentioned. So first, I'm really glad you went back because each one of those disciplines, writing, directing, producing, are so helpful. They do work together, especially on all these like indie things. Like we really need to be able to look at the projects through those different lenses, but it also gives us those options to be a good utility player and understand kind of the width and depth of how projects are made. So my film school was a 2-year program, but it was a writing, directing, producing program. So we kind of went through all 3 of those in parallel, and we were trained to either be a producer on someone else's project, direct something that someone else wrote, write a screenplay for someone else to direct, or to write, direct, produce our own things. And it does force us to be really honest with ourselves and say, okay, am I good at these or not?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should just be a writer. Maybe I should just be a director. But if we don't experience those different roles, then A, we don't know how to work with those other roles, but also B, we don't know how to coordinate those things. And similarly, so my path through film school was I got into stunt work and meeting stunt people. And when you talked about responding to the email and that got you the gig, my stunt coordinator that I went through his stunt academy always used to say, you have to be ready. Because if they say you're up and you go, oh, I'm not ready, they're going to go, who's ready? And whoever's ready, they're going to take that person. So you always need to be in the ready position. And sometimes that means like physically ready, like I can jump off the chair and get on set. Or sometimes it means I'm going to spend all my off time studying and learning and rehearsing and practicing so I have the skill set or the experience or the wisdom or whatever it might be. So another great parallel there. And then the last one was when you talked about utilizing the film school equipment, I was laughing to myself because like our school director challenged us and he said, this is a 2-year program. How can you get 4 years out of these 2 years? He's like, how can you get to the point where you have a nervous breakdown because you're just like doing too much? He goes, those are the people who are going to succeed because they're going to know how to push themselves. They're not going to, fuck off in the summer. They're going to work at the school or spend the summer working on set, or when we have a week off, they're going to pester the equipment person guy to borrow equipment to practice and then go shoot concerts or whatever else that we did. So a lot of parallels there as well. But again, it's these things that as we're moving forward, we don't necessarily connect, but when we look back, we can say, oh, very clearly A led to B, led to C, led to D. So now that you're here, you had experience, you are a YouTube adjacent influencer, perhaps. You've done set work and camera work and post-production work and writing work. Talk to me about where you are now in, dare we say, like the second half of your career, where maybe you have a little more knowledge or you have a little more specificity. Like, what are you doing now? What are you offering? What's film work or production work look like for you now?
Yeah, there's a big chunk in the middle, maybe another time. There's a big chunk in the middle, but essentially, like I graduated from Minneapolis Community Technical College and I started my own production company. With all my experience and all my knowledge, I felt like I could do it. But also like Minneapolis, it's kind of a weird place because I looked around and I was like, all right, I'm ready to work. And then I was like, wait a minute, nobody told me that there's no film work in Minneapolis. Like, how did this happen? These liars. There is in the sense of commercial production at the time. I'm not sure about now because I haven't been lived there in 10 years, but at the time, I guess Minneapolis is like the 3rd biggest advertising agency in the country, like market, because we have like big companies there, like Best Buy, Target, General Mills, 3M, like just Mayo Clinic. Like there's just huge companies there that do a lot of commercial work. But that commercial work, I don't want to really like make accusations publicly, but there's certain type of people that work those jobs and they don't want to let other people in, right? It's very, very difficult to break into. Well, it's well paying. It's kind of boring, honestly. At the time, I thought like, oh well, but it pays a lot, right? But Minnesota is a certain kind of place, and if you don't meet the certain kind of standard, then they're not going to let you in for the certain kind of work. that was a I mean, growing up in Minnesota, like I'd already kind of known that about the place, but in a field where I thought, well, maybe, there is open-mindedness about diversity or an inclusion or something like that. And they were like, no, like no, like they hold on to what they have very, very tightly, even more so. So I knew the only way I was going to survive was to start my own thing, and I did. And I found really unique opportunities there. Film, no, do it yourself. Like, right? Like if they're not going to let you in, you just got to do it yourself and don't complain about it. Just do it. I applied for a grant, a McKnight grant. McKnight is one of the biggest charitable arts foundations in Minnesota. And I finaled for a $50,000 new media grant with a project that I had called Geeky Phoebes. I made a short film called Geeky Phoebes. We built out a transmedia project for it. I was a top 3 finalist. Everybody was like, you're going to get that $50,000, going to change your career. This is going to be like the biggest thing coming out of school. I didn't get it. And it was awful. But the thing I said to myself, and as they were kind of like determining, and I told everybody, it's like, look, if I don't get this, like I'm moving to Los Angeles because this has to mean I'm pretty good. And like, honestly, like I mean, I had my own production company. I was doing commercial work and I was making a living, but I was like, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Like I'm at a certain age, like I don't have a family, don't have a wife. Like, it's either now or never if I'm going to go to Los Angeles and do this, give it a shot. And I didn't get the grant. And I was like, well, I got to keep my word here. So I'm going to go. I can't tell everybody like now, like, no, I'm not going to go. So I went. So I came to Los Angeles. Everybody was like, do you have a job? I'm like, no. Do you have an apartment? No. Like, all right, what are you going to do? Like, I don't know. I'll figure it out. And I did. The first year I really didn't work actually a whole lot. I lived off savings and I wrote every day like it was my job. Like they have the Writers Guild Library here in Fairfax and Third. And I went there pretty much every day to write. And started finding out about the fellowship circuit for writers and the contests. And I was like, I'm just gonna every single day, I'm gonna write like it's my job. I'm paying myself to write. Unfortunately, I couldn't survive fully off of that. So I hit up the LA Derby dolls here in Los Angeles. I said, like, hey, like I'm Sammy, go by the name Samurai. Like, and they were like, oh yeah, we know you. Like, come on in. And so I went in and they hired me for like their season to come in and help to like broadcast, like to be a broadcast director and help record some of their bouts and like saved my life, honestly. Like they really did. Um Ever so grateful for that. But it was only because like I was able to reach out to them because I had built up this big career elsewhere, right? And so they knew who I was. I was already vetted, I was already known. Um but roller derby saved my life here in Los Angeles. And yeah, what about a year? I was pretty much down to like the last bit of my savings and going to the library, I met someone and they were like, I overheard them talking to somebody else how they were hiring. And I was like, what's the job? And they're like, quality control for movies. And I was like, what is that? And they explained it to me and it was a blank stare. Like I was just like, I, they were like, do you think you could do it? And I was like, sure. Like I'll come in for an interview. I'll apply. So I did. And I went in for an interview and they explained the whole job to me. Blank stare. And they were like, do you think you could do, I still didn't Shane, like I didn't know, even after the interview, I had no idea what the job was. Like they explained it to me. I had no frame of reference for what the job was, much like roller derby. I didn't know what roller derby was, but I was like, I did that and seemed to work out fine. And they're like, all right, you're hired. And I was like, but honestly, do you think I could do it? And they were like, yeah, you can do it. I was like, okay. And I showed up for the first day of work and the QC operator, as they were called at the time, said, all right, you're going to sit with me today. We're going to watch Fast and the Furious 5. And I'm like, what? That's the job? You just watch the movie? Oh, okay. I could do this. And and they're going to pay me to do this? That's a job? Shit. No, that's cool. If only they could see me now back home. Um, and I did that. Yeah, I did that I guess Deluxe, right? Is that where we said we worked? Jackson went over it. Go see Jackson's episode because Jackson talked about it way more articulately, cleanly than I probably can. Did a very, very good deep dive into what we did and um, what it was like working there. I think he captured a lot of it. I can say that, I really enjoyed, I know it's a difficult, it sounds like everybody's dream job. Like, oh, wow, you pay me to watch a movie. But sometimes you're sitting there watching a movie and it's like Mystery Science Theater 3000, which was like Born in Minnesota. So, and I used to watch it as a kid. So sometimes I would just yell at the screen, like the Mystery Science Theater 3000 characters when you're alone doing an Eternal at, 2 a.m. Um, but I really, as much as it's a difficult job and there was a lot of turnover and it's a hard job to get and not a lot of people in the world do it, there is an excitement when you get to watch the new Star Wars movie or Marvel movie or like whatever. Um, and it does sometimes wear on you to watch the same movie like 20 times. But generally, like I really enjoyed the job and I thought it was like the best film education other than film school. Like watching so many different movies because we worked on the big stuff, but also the small stuff. Like Deluxe took everybody's money. So if you're doing a pro gun documentary or an anti gun documentary, like they take your money and make you a print, like, right? Pro abortion or anti abortion, like they'll take your money, like, and they'll put out your movie for you. Um, so seeing the variety of the foreign films, the documentaries, the big stuff, little stuff, like that's learning that some things were universal when it comes to people and making content and making films. Like all that stuff is ingrained in my brain now and just seeing it over and over and over. And at the time, like I don't want to talk too much about it, I guess, because like I said, Jackson, go see Jackson's episode. Um, but at the same time, like I was really writing, like I had two full-time jobs. I was, doing the QC, and then my days off, like I was writing, researching, writing, learning, processing, workshops, like anything I could do to just learn about TV writing and feature writing. And I applied to the different fellowships and the contest and I was placing. Like I'll never forget the first time like I got a phone call from Nickelodeon, the Nickelodeon writing program. I was at Deluxe working and I had to step out because I saw the voicemail and they said, "This is so and so from Nickelodeon. We're calling you back. Can you call us back?" And they were right down the street from Deluxe, like literally like half a block or half a mile away. And I called them back and they were like, "Hi, this is so and so from Nickelodeon. Just letting you know that you've semifinaled in our writing program." And I was like, "What? Like, what just happened? Like, like this is crazy." Because like the competition level and stuff, like it was just like they picked my like spec script. Um, and from there, like every other thing, like Austin semifinal, Austin Film Fest, screenwriting competition, like semifinal, like, uh, and then the snowball just kept going and going and going. Like almost every fellowship, um, contest, the nickel, like all the big competitions, big break. I was placing like top 10, semifinal, finalist. I got into the NHMC writing program, which is like so fantastic. The National Hispanic Media Coalition in 2016, which is also it's a paid fellowship, 6 weeks, sponsored by Disney and NBC. Um, and that was like the first big thing that I was able to get. Um, and that was an amazing experience. Met a lot of writers because they pick 10 writers every year. A lot of them are really great friends today working in the industry. And it was the first time, like, because they were sponsored by ABC and NBC, like you got to go to either NBC or ABC, like in their, the lot in the studio. And our year was ABC. And you had to go to a meeting with the executives and like introduce yourself and they train you how to like, do your elevator pitch and stuff. And I was so like flipping nervous. I don't know if I can swear, but I was like so nervous. Like, cause like I was just literally delivering liquor like a few years ago. and living at my parents' house and not really having a plan for my life or anything. And like here I was, like in like the echelon of like my dream coming true, of in a certain point of view.
Hey everyone, sorry to stop the show, but we have to pay some bills around here. And to do that, I wanted to point out a couple things I have on offer at my site, shaneborza.com. If you scroll down to my courses, you can see I have both a content creator live class and a DIY version. These teach you everything you need to know from a production standpoint so you can either get a writing project done, an audio project, or a film project. Doesn't matter, it works for everyone. If you scroll down, you can see some of my clients and some of the testimonials people have left telling you how helpful this has been for them. So I hope you check that out. You can also go to my shop and you can see all that I have on offer, to include coaching programs, audio stuff like soundtracks, film production stuff. I have filmmaker bundles, all types of things you might need to help you get your art out into the world. As you can see, I also have a number of books. They are all on Apple Books. So you can go to my site and get them directly, or you can go to Apple Books, put my name in, and then you can see all the books there. They are easily downloadable and you can read them on an iPad or something like that. There are coaching books here. There are poetry and photo books here. And I'm very excited. I just updated my Film Notes workbook and Film Notes book. They are expanded and updated 2023 editions. So please check those out if you want some extra stuff to help teach you production. And now back to the show. A couple things that you talked about are, I think, really important for people, again, that might be out of the industry or interested in the industry, is, as we talked about earlier, like we have to show up, we have to be ready, but we also have to kind of fact check some of those thoughts in our head, where whether it's imposter syndrome or anything else, we're like, well, I'm just some guy. I'm just a delivery guy. Like, well, yeah, that's true, but it's also true that you're a storyteller and that you have these skill sets and that you've had success. And so it's important to be really open and honest with ourselves and say, is there more work I need to do before I can do that? I don't just want to show up and be like, sure, I can do this, and then you actually can't. But we also don't want to sell ourselves short and just stay in our comfort zone. We sometimes have to dare, like you did, and just be like, I'm going to move across the country and I'll figure it out, you know? So it's about noticing those things and having those conversations, whether it's with other people or ourselves, and seeking out opportunities, looking for grants and fellowships. Maybe we don't get them, but we're definitely not going to. And, it's always no if you don't ask. So we have to risk submitting to the film festival. We have to risk submitting the script to the competition, or we have to risk applying for the job, even if we're not sure. Again, very similar thing. Like, what's QC? Like, I just had a friend who knew that Deluxe was hiring and said, oh, I know the manager there. Just let them know that I sent you. And then that was my in. I never heard of Deluxe before, never heard of QC before. But like you mentioned, and again, these are things that people can do on their own, is watch a lot of content, but watch it critically. And that was the biggest thing I learned out of QCs. We're not just mindlessly ingesting 8 hours of movies a day. We're watching for mistakes. And when we've seen a movie 20 times, we're past the story now. Now we're looking at the cuts, the shots, the background. We're really pay attention to what else could I possibly pay attention to keep me interested instead of glazing over. So we have to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And people can go to their library and find foreign films and Oscar-winning films and all these things that may not, they can get the Criterion channel. There's a way to kind of give themselves that, like, film school or Deluxe, master's degree in film. It just takes time, and you have to have the interest. You have to dare to watch or read things that you might not normally do to get those new influences, or like you said, to see, across genres or backgrounds, there are these similarities. And different cultures are different, and yet there are these universalities, in humanity. In an action movie is an action movie, regardless of where it's from. Like, funny is funny.
Mhm.
So all those things are important, and I encourage and challenge people to seek those things out. I did want to pivot though a little bit. We started talking about like, hey, you're a photographer and this consultant, but you've been talking a lot about writing. So talk to me a little bit about how you maybe threaded some of this stuff together, because I can see from the outside, like, oh, you've done all this film work, camera stuff. So photography, obviously that's still camera work. You're, working with people or teaching them how to do stuff now. So I could see all that goes together. And then you have the writing side. So
Mhm.
now that you have gotten, to LA, worked at the roller derby girls there, got the deluxe job, you've been writing all this stuff. What's the next step? Where does the photography come in? Where does the content consulting come in?
Well, I didn't get the Disney fellowship. Heartbreaking. but but yeah, you're right. Like you really have to just go out and do it. Like it's I understand like it's a really scary thing, and maybe I was just naive and stuff, but like I don't know. Like I just like, yeah, we only get one life here. Like we gotta like do it, man. Like I understand it's scary, but not doing it is scarier to me. Um and I think for a long time, like I really did have to get out of my own head too, like you said, and not because yeah, again, like I was telling myself this whole time, like as I was even placing in these high profile fellowships and contests and stuff, like I'm like I just went to community college. Like I'm competing against people that went to USC and Tisch and Harvard and Yale and like whatever. Cause you always meet these people. Like when you like in these finalist rooms, you're like, I went to Yale and I was the ambassador for the I don't know, like Iran for 10 years. And I know Obama. And then you're just like, what the fuck am I doing? Obama's my best friend. Like, should I call him right now in this meeting? Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I went to community college and I don't know. But it's like, well, then I turned it around and been like, yeah, well, like, fuck yeah. Like, I don't like, yeah, I went to community college and here I am standing next to you. So what did I say about you, honestly? um, but yeah, it's about finding that confidence too. I think that's what it was, where it's like now, like, yeah, like maybe a little overconfident. But yeah, so it was but a lot of times, like I didn't know how to handle it. A lot of the stress, the rejection, like, I've been working on ways to like, to find healthier ways to deal with it. But it did come at like a physical toll on my body, like a lot of the just the constant going after it. So film note, it can be a very difficult thing to pursue, but so you need to find ways to really help you step away from it or de-stress, but also know that if the creative career is no different than any other career. Like I um, hired on an editor to work on a project, and they let me know that there was going to be a delay because of mental health issues, and I was like, look, I understand, but also like we have a job to do, and you need to let me know, like just because you have and I'm very sympathetic to it and very like empathetic to it, but at the same time, like your job isn't any different than anybody else's job. Like just because you're doing a creative job doesn't mean like you're special. And you still need to let people know so there can be other arrangements made or something else done in order, because there's still a deadline. Um but yeah, so I think I did work at Deluxe and I was going through the writing stuff, and we had COVID hit, and that was a really difficult time. Like we were still working at theatrical distribution, so I had to go in every day. I was one of the people that was selected or whatever to go into the office every day um, to get some sort of content out. That was a very difficult time. There was a lot that kind of happened. It was a crazy time for everybody, right? Um, the long and short of it is that in 2022, I, after like 7 years, I don't work there anymore. So, um, and it was time to find something else to do, right? And during COVID too, like I'm a big believer in like mental health and therapy and stuff. So like I encourage anybody to like, if you have the resources or find a way to get the resources to do that, especially if you're a creative. Film note again, like you really, I'm a big believer in it. It's helped me. It's really transformed who I am as a creator and as a creative person. And it's a very stressful, it could be a very stressful thing because a lot of times it just doesn't turn off. You're always thinking about how to do something sometimes. But there wasn't like a lot to do during COVID, and my therapist was just like, "Look, what about sometimes you talk about photography or you have a camera. Like, why don't you just take your camera and start taking pictures?" And I was like, Okay, well, I have to dig it out of my closet because it's been there since I moved to LA in 10 years. Like, well, at that time, like 8 years ago, 7 years ago." And so I did, and I just kind of walked around Koreatown here, the neighborhood that I live in Los Angeles, and started taking pictures. And I really found like I enjoyed it because it was a way to just kind of be creative and not really think about anything. There was no pressure because even with writing, there had become a lot of pressure to the next thing that you write. How am I going to compete with it? Where am I going to put it? Photography just kind of came out, and it was just like, I'm just going to do this and put it on my Instagram, and I don't know, take a picture. I like camera, a small little camera, and go around town, just shoot some pictures. And there's no expectation with it. So I found a creative outlet doing photography, and I knew I liked camera. So like and I started taking pictures, and people were like, "These are nice." And I'm like, "Really?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I started doing more and more and putting up more and more. And I found like it's just a really authentic way to uh to tell stories again. Photography is like one image, and how do you tell the story? And it was like stacking a lot of the experience into this new skill that I was learning. And after my time at Deluxe, I needed something to do. Started training for an ultra marathon, 50-mile ultra marathon. And I was in the running community here in Los Angeles. And so sometimes in between, or like, I'd go to the marathons and take pictures from my friends and stuff and post them on Instagram or post them up. And people were like, "These are good." Like people that had no investment in me or like didn't really know me. They were just like, "These are great pictures." And I started doing it more and more. And I found people started asking me like, "How much do you charge?" And I'm like, "For what?" And they're like, "For photography." And they're like, "Really? Okay, cool." Yeah, X amount of dollars. And they were like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Really? Again? Like, are you going to pay me that much?" And so I started like just taking pictures for people. And then like events, people asking me like, how much do you charge for events? And I told them, and they were like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Really? Oh, cool. All right." If the IRS is listening, not that much. It was like a couple gigs here. What money? They paid me in food. Uh, um, this is all speculation, storytelling. Um, no, but yeah, I really, and then I really found like I liked the events, and it really stacked on the skills that I had. Like I just loved showing up to an event and taking pictures, and then like telling the story like in one image and really capturing candids. And it was like where the roller derby experience played in because being an event photographer, you just have to always have situational awareness. Oh, somebody's embracing over there, somebody's smiling over there, something exciting is happening over there. Like I'm going to point my camera there and like shoot. And like my screenwriting experience paid off because like, what's the story I can tell in this one image? Like, what's the story here? And as soon as I found that, like putting those skills together, like the floodgates opened and I started posting things and people were just like referrals and asking and just a little bit of networking because we're here in Los Angeles. Like last year I just met somebody at a networking thing that was just completely random and they were like, I got this thing for Robert Kennedy. And I was like, from the Kennedys? And they were like, yeah, he's running for president. I was like, well, do you need a photographer? They're like, sure. And then I'd done a bunch of things for them. And then I did a thing for a sorority. They hired me this year again. A congresswoman was there. So like high profile people taking pictures of um, events with like movie stars and stuff at them just because like, they're like, you do it like nobody else. Like I don't know how you do it. Sometimes I don't even know how I do it. I just press the button. Sometimes some things happen. But yeah. And at the same time, so I thought photography was really going to be the thing, but then also looking for something to do where my skills kind of played in. There was a YouTuber that I kind of followed watching for the past couple years. and he had kind of revamped his content, and he wanted to make like these high profile videos, like, or high quality. They kept calling them, I don't know, YouTube comes up with weird terms, but high quality videos, he called them. And I just emailed him because there was a couple errors. There was a few errors in the video. And I was like, hey, I used to do QC. Like, I noticed these errors. Here's the time codes. Like, if you need someone to look it over before you post it, like, maybe I could do this as a business. Like, I have the experience. And he emailed me back and he's like, let's set up a meeting. So we did. And he's like, look, I don't really care. YouTube is like the quality. Who cares? I was like, oh, quality. Who cares? Like, basically, I really need someone to help me like produce these, or like give me some insight into like how to create these videos, as like from a script point of view and like production, and so maybe some directing, or how to find an editor, work with an editor. And he's like, do you think you can do it? And again, what's my answer? I was like, yeah, I can probably do that. I can probably do, yeah, I can do that. And so I started working with him one-on-one on a client basis over Zoom. And we had immediate success. Like his first two videos I worked with him with, like, went viral, kind of viral, like 300,000 and 200,000 views. I mean, his channel was getting like 3,000 views per video. It's like back-to-back success. I was like, oh, there must be something here. So I started reaching out to other people, just cold emailing people, like YouTube creators that I kind of liked or knew about, saying like, hey, I do this for this creator over here. Like, do you think that? And I got another client, and then I got another client. And then like now I have like a bunch. So now I'm kind of coming full circle in a way, like going back to YouTube and saying like, let me use all of the skills that I've collected over the past like 10 to 15 years and help you creators, like, give you a conduit to all this knowledge, and like, let me help you create like a better process, because a lot of people are, it's a lot of YouTubers quit because of the stress, or because of they don't have a process, and it gets overwhelming, and they just throw money at the problem, and then like suddenly their channel that's making $1 million a month is only making like really $30,000 a month, because like the expenses have just ballooned because they don't know what else to do, and they throw money at the problem. And it's amazing to me that like I've met with creators that have 3 million subscribers, 6 million subscribers, 100,000 subscribers, and 700 subscribers, and they all have the same problems. And it's like, there's gotta be a market for this, because they're all suffering. And as much as, I mean, I'm not the first YouTube consultant, there are many out there. But I was like, I'm just going to focus on the content and the process. Like, everybody else can promise you the moon and do this trick and do this algorithm hack and whatever, but I'm going to help you create the content that you want to create. Like, that is my mission. Like, I don't want to see my fingerprints on anything. Like, whatever you think the best is, and I can make suggestions, but at the end of the day, it's your channel, it's your content. You need to create it. Like, it's your decision to do. I can make suggestions, I can help you. So I really help them with like the scripting process, like the format, giving them a production schedule if they need it. Some clients I'm really hands-on with. They want me to be hands-on and like really help them craft it and shoot it, and do the whole. So I call myself a content consulting producer. So just focus on the content and not the thumbnails or titles or whatever, or the channel managing or whatever. What's the content? How do we tell the story? What do you want to do? Like, what's the topic? Like, you're going to know your topics and audience better than I ever will. So let's just make things and I bring an audience point of view. I always ask them, the first question is like, who you're making the content for? Like, who's your audience? And my job is to always be that voice of like, is this going to appeal to your audience? To ask that question constantly. Like, why are you doing these wacky like edits? If your audience is like 45-year-old men, like, why are you editing this video for 13-year-old boys? Like, right? Like, why did you pick that editor? Right, to do that? Because these are the decisions they're making, and they don't even know why they're making them, because they're just letting their editor make these decisions. And a lot of them, like, someone needs to be like, stop doing this because you're not appealing to the audience that you want to appeal to, right? So what I enjoy about it a lot is just like, every client I work with is different. I don't have like a set plan, a system to just be like, this is what you're going to do because this is my process. It's very much like, what do you need help with? If you want me to be hands-on a lot, hands-on a little, and let's just help you create content, and in an efficient way that's going to be appealing to the audience. Because that's the experience that I have watching so many movies. Like, getting that job now, like, good luck. It was hard to get when we did it. Like, now with the constriction of Hollywood, and there's been a bunch of layoffs in the whole industry. Like, good luck. There's only like less than 50 people in the world that do QC for theatrical distribution, probably even less now. But just being from the audience's point of view, is a lot of creators don't think of that. They're just like, well, I'm going to do this because I want to, and then they don't get the result, and they're like, well, what happened? And you're just like, well, you didn't make the content for the audience. And a lot of them don't know how to, it's not, they're still making the same content that they were in 2017 or 2018 or 2019, still thinking it's going to work. And it's like, you constantly have to be evolving your content, like shifting it. And like now you're competing against, like in 2019, you weren't competing against the NFL. Like the NFL's on YouTube now, the NFL, the Sunday Ticket. Like, where do you think all the traffic's going to go on a Sunday afternoon? Like, they're going to go to channels covering the NFL. They're going to go to NFL content. They're going to go to NFL players who are having their own shows on YouTube. Like, I don't care if you're making makeup tutorials, you're still competing with the NFL. And like wrestling is big on YouTube. These big media companies are now moving to YouTube, and YouTube is catering. So like, and they're producing really high quality stuff. So like, you need to compete now. Like, that is your competition. It's not, I don't know if sitting behind a camera in your room is going to cut it anymore, unless you're just like one of those 1 in 10 million people that can just so charismatic that you can just do it. And there are those people, but like, you're probably not that person. Like, I'm sorry to break it to you. So you're going to have to bring a little bit more to the game. So I've been really enjoying it. So.
Well, I'd say those are really good notes. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I was just listening to Tim Ferriss podcast, and he was talking to someone who was a repeat guest that had been on years ago. And they were talking about just what you said, like 10 years ago, or a little longer, 15 years ago, when podcasts were just getting started, it was easy to have a big splash because there weren't as many. And now it has really exploded. And one of the things that I'm excited about, you're actually the first person to be shot like in the studio, even though you're remote. I'm in the studio for the first time. I had been just shooting at home because, like, well, I think connecting with people and telling their stories of, as you know, there's no one way into the industry. You ask 100 people, they all got in 100 different ways. But this is my way this year in season 3 of like, oh, I now have a studio space, and there's going to be cameras and mics and everything once they get all the technical stuff out of the way. So that's a way for me to upgrade. But it is really important. And this is where we need people like consultants or mentors or coaches or teachers to say, from the outside, I'm going to come in and point out some things that either you didn't notice or you weren't even aware were choices to be made. The creator, of course, can choose whatever choice they want, but they at least need to know there's an option there. So they can say, oh, well, the editor just sent it like that, so I just thought that was the best way to do it. Like you mentioned about why are you editing it like this? Or, well, that's the only editor available, so that's why I chose them. Like, well, maybe we need more options. It's about asking questions and making conscious choices instead of just reacting without thinking, or not even realize there's a choice to be made. Like, some people just record something and they upload it. They don't even edit it,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really glad that you're doing that, because those kinds of dialogues that we had, whether it's at Deluxe or at film school or whatever, the combination of film is something I love, because it is, as we talked about before, it's like the art and the science. We have to know all these technical skills. You have to know how to use a camera, but like you mentioned earlier, like the artistic view, using our gut to just tell us, like, and I just felt right. We sometimes can't even explain why I took a picture of them and not them, or like why I framed it a certain way. Like you said, it's just, I've had all this wisdom experience. It's kind of guiding my hand, even if I can't technically explain the reason. But you still have to have those technical skills in the background to be like, I set the camera up right. I have the right lens. Like, I know where to stand.
Mm-hmm.
Those two things really need to come together. Just like you now are able to, like you said, have that full circle and say, everything that happened enabled me to be where I am now, so that you can work with people and help them say, well, I started my show and they were shitty, and I met somebody who helped me, and now they're getting better. We get to better because we started wherever we started.
Yeah, and definitely, yeah, and like just building on the skills and um it yeah, it is like a full circle thing and like some I've had some clients too, like they don't want to listen, and it's like, well, okay, it's fine. Like you don't have to listen to me. Um, and that actually that's why I started my YouTube channel too. I mean, even though like I thought that I had this idea just because of outreach too, to like do a YouTube channel where it's like, well, there's a lot of YouTube channels that cover like how to grow your channel, how to do this, how to create your content and stuff like that. But they're going to mold you in their image. Like, let me do a channel where I can find creators, content out there, and then point out some things that they're doing well or bad and how to improve it. Right. And somebody was coaching me at the time. I was like, well, Sammy, which, I got rid of them as a coach. They were like, well, if you do this, then people are going to say, they're going to say like, well, your videos are crappy. So like, why should I listen to you? And I was like, well, I mean, fine. But also like the message that I have to share is going to outweigh like the crappiness of the video. But it was like, I'm just going to do it. Right. So I started my YouTube channel. It looks quality on YouTube. And every other day I post a new video. I find a creator and I post like something they're doing well and talk about why it's good. And maybe sometime I started out I was nice, but finding things that weren't going well for some YouTube channels. And because, you hear the thing, well, negativity sells. And so like, I was like, okay, like maybe I'll try some of that. But it didn't really feel natural. I really like, I was still nice. I wasn't too mean. Um, some people I'll go hard on. Like, I think I went on pretty hard on, what's the Ryan Holiday from the Daily Stoic and Alex Ramosi. Just because like they don't care. I like, but I found like when I was complimentary to the creator and what they were doing well, like they got more views and they better response. And I was like, well, this feels more natural anyways. Like I want to help people. I don't really want to like go too hard on people and talk about the negative stuff. So as I started to kind of shift in my own content of doing like more complimentary, like it's been a better response and like more dialogue with some of the creators that respond in the comments and say the exact same thing. Like you made me aware of something that I didn't even like know about. Like you covered something, and my videos are just kind of like I talk about one topic, one lesson about something they're usually doing well. Uh, and the channel has like really like grown. Like I'm surprised as well. But I will say to anybody that is like, your videos are crappy quality because I just do them on Loom and do like a little bit of editing. There's no fancy editing or whatever. I will say I am a smart producer because I only spend about $15 a month on my YouTube channel. And it's been a great marketing tool. And I promise you that I could make a video about like, I made X amount of dollars on my YouTube channel with 22 subscribers. Cause I did, like, somebody reached out and was like, we need help. And I took them on as a client. And like, I bet you that I've made more money than with 22 subscribers than like anybody else on YouTube. And it was because I did a YouTube video on somebody and they liked it. And it's one of their competitors. And they were like, can you help us? And I was like, yeah, I'll help you. Um, but yeah, like I really enjoy like doing the channel. And, even when I did a video on like Timcast or something. And I think they just sent it to Timcast people, the algorithm. And my videos get like, like I think the stats are like 7 to 10 views per video, which is great because like nobody used to watch. But it had like 700. It's got like 700 views now. But I remember like I checked the YouTube studio, went from like 3 views to like 300 all of a sudden, and I was getting like all these like weird comments. And I was like, well, it's really good that I'm doing this. I'm doing the channel for two reasons. One, because I need to know like kind of what it's like to run a channel. Because when that video took off, I was like, this must be what it feels for a creator to have a video that goes viral. It's a microcosm, but like this is how it feels because you're getting all these weird comments from people that shouldn't probably be like, aren't your audience. sometimes, and or like you just wake up and it's like, oh wow, like I'm used to like 4 views at this time with a video post, now like 400. And two, like I want people to see the progression of my channel. Like I'm practicing what I preach. Like you can see if you started a video one to like video now, like as of this recording, like you'll see a progression of like me pivoting my content and me making changes and me like doing, even though it's a simple presentation, like changing the presentation, changing the thumbnails. Like I want people to see me. If I started out at the top tier doing well polished videos and deep dives and stuff, like it would go maybe be a little antithetical to what I'm trying to do and show people how to do. Like you need to constantly be evolving your content and changing. I want people to see that change, almost like a record of like eventually I will get a better camera and maybe a better microphone and stuff, but like you're going to see that happen and change the direction of the content. And sometimes I'm in a good mood when I record a video. Sometimes I'm in a bad mood when I record a video, but like the video comes out every other day. So like, you're going to see like, maybe I'm not in the mood to do a video that day, but I'm going to do one because that's the schedule. And I just try to teach people in the channel like how to make better content. That's the whole mission of the trying to teach them what I learned, to be one source of like these are small little lessons, and if it applies to the content you're making, like take the lesson. But if it doesn't, then don't.
Where can people reach out? What's the best place to either go to see you professionally in some capacity, or just follow you socially to see some more of your work?
Yeah, you can go to the YouTube channel, Looks Quality on YouTube. So just type in Looks Quality. It's make better content. Looksquality.com is the website. I'm reworking it right now because it did take time to like really kind of figure out what I was going to do in that space, like the consulting business. But like, it's kind of the same thing. Like I do the consulting, script writing for them, helping them craft their content. Sometimes I shoot the content for them. Find production staff, editors, a lot of production stuff, or writing, or even QC. Like if they just need me to look at something before it posts, that's an important step that's becoming more and more important on YouTube. I think as we elevate the game on YouTube. And honestly, like I feel like hopefully like I'm ahead of the curve. Like there's been some pretty dark news coming out of Hollywood. I hope, but this might be a wrap, guys. I don't know. But you can look at it that way and be like, this is dark time and it's never going to be the same. Like it's definitely never going to be the same. But you can also look at it, I guess, the way I choose to, and just being, this is an exciting time. And like, I really love YouTube as a platform. Like I watch more YouTube than anybody probably. Like I love it. And I just love the creativity and stuff. And, there's a whole new, creative where you can take film and develop it again. Like like everything, we just have to retool, refine the craft. And I think that's where we're going. It's going to be some exciting things coming out of like creators making things. But yeah, it looks quality. Photography, I don't know. Yeah, you can go to at Sarzoza, Sarzoza on Instagram. That's my Instagram handle. Go ahead and follow if you like photography. I imagine this is going to a nationwide audience. So I mostly work in Los Angeles and Orange County for photography. So if you're here, you can hit me up on Instagram. I have a website, but just go to Instagram is probably the best way. And then sarzoza.com is my website. If you want to watch my short films they're out there. You can watch them, Geeky Phoebes and The Red Dress. And if you're even independent filmmakers, if you need to, I think that's a step that they oftentimes forget. You're going to have your big premiere somewhere, or you're going to send it out to a festival, like have me watch it over, or maybe Shane. I don't know if that's Shane's business or not, but I do QC for like indie films and short films and stuff. Like send it over. I have somebody look it over because you're just trusting sometimes you're just trusting your editor that doesn't have an offline media. That you're just trusting your editor hopefully watched it before they send it to you to send off to the film fest or whatever, or into a contest. So I do QC for YouTube creators and independent filmmakers as well. So if you need any of that stuff, that's why I would say my YouTube channel. If you need any help in your content, reach out definitely. But the experience, I would say, is very important, because even yesterday I was shooting for a client, and somewhere we had to go off site because we usually shoot in their office, but we're going to like a school, and somewhere in the shuffle, like somebody forgot the tripods, and I showed up and I was like, "Where's the tripods?" And they're like, "Oh, they're still at the office." And we are like, "All right, go back and get them." But it was starting at like 6 o'clock, and I was like, "Well, look, like it was a good moment for me because I was like, all right, I have so much experience, like I'm not going to panic. Like let's just get this lecture, let's get the what they call it, the lecture table or whatever, like the lecture stand. Let's find a way to put the camera on top of there, hit record, so we get one clean shot, and then I'm gonna do the rest handheld until these tripods show up." And that's what we did. I was like, we're just not gonna panic. We're gonna find a solution because I have so much experience. Like I'm completely confident that I can do this. Like there was my heart rate didn't go up one extra beat just because I was like, all right, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna make it work.
And that's the mark of the accrued experience coming in. Again,
Yeah.
when people don't know, they default to stuck, panic. What do I do? I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And instead it's okay, these are all the options I see. Which one's the best one? How can I pivot? How can I be flexible? How can I maintain the calm, the cool, the professionalism? So that, I think that's a great story to go out on, because again, it just shows how we are able to look back on like 15 years of things through different lenses. The director's hat, the writer's hat, the producer's hat, the consultant hat, the photography hat, whatever hat it is. They all do work together. It
Yeah.
helps us to be able to look in like in the coaching world, we call it like a whole self. We have that 360-degree view of things.
Mm-hmm.
And like you mentioned earlier about the QC, like that is a thing that I'm sure most people don't, it's not even on the radar. Like, oh, the editor did it, it's done. Like, well, let's give it a watch and make sure.
Yeah,
Let's
you editor.
let's be looking for mistakes. And if there aren't any, great. But if there are, we're going to be glad we caught them. And we know what to do if there is a mistake, not again, panic or what have you. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. So before we wrap up, I wanted to kind of pass the baton back to you and see if there's anything else you wanted to mention before we go to a close.
I was thinking, like as Shane was saying, like you don't want to, if you're going to pursue something creative like this, like I remember I was making my first website when I was finishing school, and like I had all this roller derby footage and stuff, and like just pretty much everything I made throughout my whole 3 years of school. And I was making my first like website, Sarzoza.com. And I was talking to my friend Wiati, who's a photographer and roller derby, and taught me a lot. And honestly, is still a good friend, about shooting and cameras and stuff. And I I was sitting with him on lunch, and I was just like, wow, Wiati, like I never realized like how much stuff I had. And he's like, well, yeah, like that's because for so long you were like this close to it, like you were only an inch away from it, and now like you're further away from it, right? So now you can see it all because you're looking on it. And that like always stuck with me. And I wish I would have. I think now like I really internalize that lesson. But I think it's important for people, if you're going to have a creative career, pursue this in any capacity. Like, don't try to measure your success daily. I used to be like 350 pounds and I kept it off like over 100 pounds for like almost 20 years now. But same thing with like weight loss. Like you don't want to measure your success, or you don't want to measure yourself every day. You want to be able to look back and be like, oh yeah. Cause it's easy to do that, especially today's world, like with social media, like you post things up. I mean, like, oh, I got 2 likes or 2 views. I had like a negative view on a video the other day, and I was like, how did this happen? I'd never seen a fucking negative view before. Somebody unwatch it on YouTube. But then like the creator ended up sharing it because he liked my analysis so much. He shared it on his community page, and then I think it's up to like 300 views now. So like if I would have only measured it at a -1 view, I would have been like, oh, I'm terrible. There's nobody's watching this shit. But if I would have came back the next day and measured it, it would have been like 300 views, right? And like a complimentary like guy shared it. He's got like 100,000 subscribers, and shared my video with all of his audience, and they came and watched it and they liked it too. Um, So yeah, it's easy to do that. But yeah, like you're saying, like now, like 15 years experience or whatever, like everything that I've done, I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, I am experienced, I am knowledgeable, I am confident. And creating content is like I tell people all the time, creating content is like just one of the hardest things to do in the world. Like, if it was easy, if every movie that Christopher Nolan made or Martin Scorsese made would be perfect, and I would love. But I mean, they have their misses too, just because it's so hard. There's so many variables. So just make the thing, because that's the real prize, is to have something. And that just go make stuff, and start collecting it into a little area, so that one day you can look back and be like, oh, it's all my stuff. Those are, I'd only play with 2 or 3 action figures at a time, but they'd go into a big pile where I had like 50 of them, right? Like, that's all my 50 action figures. Like, this is what I get to choose, to tell my next story, but I'm only going to use like 2 or 3. um so yeah, so just and really just, honestly, like, the pressure that can come with it is very real and very serious, and I have peers, and that the stakes are high sometimes, and the pressure is real, and the deadlines that can't be moved. And like, just like, be kind to yourself, because it is so difficult, and not a lot of people do it, right? Like, not a lot of people choose to do it because they just see the challenge and they're like, no, like, I can't even. Like, people tell me all the time, I don't know how you do it, and I was like, I don't know either, but I just do it. Like, how do you deal with so much rejection? How do you deal with that failure? How do you deal with it? And it's like, I just do it, because I can't imagine not doing it. So yeah, really be kind to yourself, find ways to decompress, to walk away from it if you have to for a little bit, to just to tell yourself it's not the biggest deal in the world if you don't get. Like, I've had a lot of like rejections, a lot of things not go my way. And the king of the final and the semifinal, but somehow every time, like, I just, like a gambling addict or something, I just keep going back, and like, I'm going to submit one more time. That's going to be it, guys. This is going to be the one. So just really, yeah, really just be kind to yourself, and just find ways to decompress and relax, and just be yourself. Honestly, like, it's the dumbest advice anybody can give anybody. But it's unfortunately, it's the truest advice. Like, just be yourself. And sometimes it can be a journey. Like, finally, I'm myself after like 15 years of doing this. Like, but I can say I'm myself. But I was only myself because I went through the journey. That's the real be yourself lesson, I guess.
That's a great, I think, final kind of lesson. And as you mentioned, whether it's the coming full circle, which we talked about a couple times, or the accruing of skills and wisdom, or in retrospect, looking at the path, it is the journey. We're
Mhm.
only where we are because we went from where we were, and where we are is just on the way to where we're going. And it's going to keep changing, like those view counts. Like,
Yeah,
so
like
thanks so much for being here. We'll, as I mentioned earlier, have all the links on the screen or in the show notes, or both. If you're not aware and you're watching this, this is also going out as a podcast on all the platforms, so you can listen to it. It's easy to share. Or if you're only listening to the audio and you want to see the interview, so you can put a face with a name, or you can see some of the things on screen, then go to the YouTube channel and check that out. We do have a new episode the first Monday of every month, so that you can learn more about people in the industry, what they're doing, and how you might be inspired to get in the industry as well. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next show. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support the show, please click on the link below. You can also contact me at my website if you have any questions about filmmaking or anything else. Off to the side, you'll see a couple of my books, Film Notes and the Film Notes Workbook. I encourage you to check those out if you'd like to learn more about filmmaking. See you in the next episode.
Scene one, Apple, take one.